For coming into our social media. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Please do me a favor. Use this time to share this to your friends, your family. Mom, help me out. Send it to your friends and to your family so that we have a good group here tonight. I want you to have your questions ready. Please ask your questions. Don't be embarrassed, because here's the thing. You might ask a question that someone might be too uncomfortable or embarrassed to ask. Well, if you got cojones on you, you ask. Get out of this mediocre, lukewarm, unsatisfying, miserable marriages and reroute it towards abundance. So there you go. People are kind of coming in. Hey, Obanta, how are you? Mindy, welcome. I get to see you guys here on my screen for those coming in. And very good. Okay. So I'll give it a few more minutes and then we are going to get started. My husband doesn't want to have sex with me. My husband doesn't want to have sex with me. If you've been accompanying us this week through our stories, maybe you're here just because River and Rita are really cute. That's okay also. So if you've been accompanying us throughout this week, you've noticed that we've been talking about love language. And I mentioned that one of Renee's love language, well, two of them, his top two, is physical touch and words of affirmation. And I also mentioned that Renee always wants to have sex, right? And here's the thing. My husband just wants me for sex. And there are tons of you who said, oh, yes, I agree. My husband, I can't even get out of the shower. And if I don't get dressed fast enough, there he is. Honey, I'm ready. Are you ready? And these wives are like, Lord, have mercy. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. I got a message, a direct message this week, and it said this. I watched the live. My husband only wants me for sex. You should do a live for when the opposite is true. When the husband doesn't really care for sex. I feel very alone. I feel like it's only me, especially when I see lives like this, the one I just recently did, right? That emphasizes that husband wants sex all the time. And so I want to applaud the person who courageously said, you know what, Amanda, you need to do a live about this because it's not my situation and I feel alone. I feel like I'm the only one who is living and experiencing this. Well, and so what I did is I shared this wife's question and I did a little poll. And guess what? There were other wives who felt the same way. There were other wives who felt the same way. And way more than you would think. In fact, I had a husband who he was watching this and he was so taken aback. He was so surprised. He called me and he said, Amanda, wait, hold on. Is this a real thing? Like, are you joking? Like, where is this woman, right? Where is this woman? And I said, it's a real thing. In fact, 1 out of 5 marriages, the wife has a higher desire, a higher sex drive. And so we are going to see that just now. Why? Because wives, if this is you, I don't want you to feel alone. If you are in this 20%, that's okay. Because you are not alone. So you might be right now struggling with feelings of rejection. You might be assuming that there is something wrong with you. Maybe if you lost some weight, maybe if you changed your hair, maybe if you use a different perfume, or if you use clothes that were a little revealing, then maybe, just maybe, your husband would be interested in having sex with you. Maybe, as a wife told me, man, I'm so frustrated that the reason I'm fighting with him all the time isn't because he forgot to buy groceries. It isn't because he left the dirty dishes in the sink, but it's because in the back of my head, all the while I'm thinking, there is something about me that is undesirable. Or maybe the biggest fear of them all is that somehow your husband does not want to have sex with you because he is getting sex elsewhere. And unfortunately, a lot of us immediately go to this assumption, oh, no, there's something wrong with this man. Surely he's cheating. Surely he's watching pornography. He's masturbating. He has a mistress. Amanda, he's going to the brothels, right? But you will see that that is not always the case. In fact, it could even be a small percentage of what is really going on. Is that you, Renee? Are you in the 20th percent? I'm unfortunately going to, Renee, you know I'm not in the 20th percent, right? You would love that, but I am not. So here we go. Look, I want to start off here with a little story. It's a familiar story. It's the story of Adam and Eve. And there they're sharing their lives together. They're experiencing all the goodness and the greatness and the awesomeness of God. But then one day, Eve, as she distanced herself from Adam, she is walking around the forbidden tree, and there a serpent begins to speak. And now, women, we are oftentimes very curious to our friends don't speak, and so this aroused her curiosity. This arouses her curiosity, and so I'm going to bring it up here, if you have your Bible, to Genesis 3. Genesis 3. Look at this. We'll pick it up in verse 1. Now the serpent was more cunning than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, has God indeed said, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden? Well, immediately right there, that is a lie, because God in fact did not say that. And Eve goes and questions him in verse 2. And the woman said to the serpent, we may eat the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God was trying to enter into controversy. You're talking, serpent, let me go get Adam. What is going on? But she keeps going back and forth. Verse 4, then the serpent said to the woman, you shall, knowing good and evil. And we know how the story goes. Eve is convinced, and she goes and she eats of the fruit. Now, why do I bring this up in our talk of my husband doesn't want to have sex with me? Well, here's why. Satan is very good at causing doubt in our mind and in bringing all sorts of assumptions that are not truth, but that are founded in lies. And so you might be thinking now, wife, my husband doesn't want to have sex with me because of all these things I just mentioned. Because he's not attracted to me anymore. He has a mistress. He's addicted to pornography. He's gay, as a wife told me. I think my husband's gay. There's no way, Amanda, he doesn't want to have sex with me. Surely he just has to be attracted to men. It will cause doubt in your mind, doubt in your heart, and then he will start planting seeds of frustration, of anger, of distrust, and of these. Don't get ahead of yourselves. Don't assume all these things that are not true, Satan causes us to doubt, and then he begins to infiltrate our mind with all of these assumptions. Because here's the thing, the conflict over sexual desire is frequent. Not only is it frequent, but it's common in both marriages. Whether you find yourself in the 80% or whether you find yourself wife in the 20%, the conflict over sexual desire is common. Why? Because whether it's the husband saying it's not enough or the wife saying it's not enough, there is conflict over this. Now, typically the stereotypical conflict is that the husband wants sex all the time and the wife is not interested. And because of this stereotype, here's what happens. Unfortunately, the research is not fair. You know why? Because the husband who does not have a high sexual desire, you honestly think that he's going to be around all of his friends, all the bros on a Saturday night, and they're going to be saying, oh yeah, I have sex 3-4 times a week, which is also not true, right? Which is also not true. Yeah, I have sex with my wife like 3 times a day. And the husband who has low sexual desire, you think he's going to be like, well, let me tell you something. I'm only wanting to have sex with my wife once a month. You think he's going to say that? No, he is not. He's never going to say that. He's probably going to lie in that circle, be like, yeah, I want to have sex with my wife all the time too. He's not going to tell the truth. And then, when wives are all together and the wives are saying, oh my gosh, my husband, he's chasing me all the time. The husband's going to say, well, sucks for me. I think my husband's gay because he never wants to initiate. In fact, we've only had sex every other month. You think she's going to say that? Probably not. You know why? Because women are always in competition with each other. Always in competition with each other. So she's not going to give a hand to turn. No way. She is going to be embarrassed. She's going to be ashamed. She's going to get home after this conversation, right? Satan, look at what Satan is just putting all doubts. Really? Because look, all your friends, all your family, they're being pursued. They're being desired. Are you sure your husband's not cheating on you? And so then you're going to start attacking his character. You're not man enough. My friend's husband is pursuing her every single day. You're not a man. You're a coward. You know, you're gay or whatever the case may be. And Satan is all the while like, yes, I got him exactly where I want him. So we are not going to do that. We are not going to do that. And so for you, wife, who are out there saying, man, I'm part of the 20%, and what on earth is going on, and is that you need to go to the desert, alone. You need to go to the desert alone. You need to go to that desert, and you need to do sort of three things. During, in our nonprofit, I believe, we're doing these 5 a.m. prayers, as I have been sharing with you guys. And something that I mentioned this morning, and I think something that I mentioned even last week as well, is that in the Bible, we see characters, how the one who was sold into slavery by his brothers, well, he fought with God. He decided that he was going to not sleep with you, because I'm not going to do this great wickedness before God. So look, he fought with God. He chose to align himself with God, and together they cooperated that he would have victory over his temptations, victory over his struggles, and even though his... Now, what about someone who fought all night long? They went back and forth against God, and it says that Jacob, his name was changed to Israel, for he prevailed against God. Now, let's be real, right? God, if he really wanted to use all of his strength and all of his might, Jacob would have to wrestle against him, that fight with himself after he sold Jesus. So look, wives, the first thing you need to do is you need to go. Was changed in the desert. Who else? Moses, we have him, right? 40 years in the desert. David, he was constantly running away from finances. If you can't talk about parenting or in-laws without getting defensive, without maybe shutting down, blowing up, criticizing, high emotions, as does sexual intimacy. And so first, you need to go alone to the desert with God, that he would work in your character, in your emotions, in your heart, that you would prepare yourself. Step 1 is preparing yourself to have this tough conversation with your husband. Because a lot of us, we go to the battle without having trained, without being prepared. We do exactly what Moses did. When Moses found out that he was going to be the deliverer of the Israelites, he tries to do it on his own, fails miserably, and now has to go to the desert where God is going to have him unlearn a bunch of things and then relearn a bunch of things. And so whether you fight against him, just do not fight to be had. Why? Because on one hand, you are feeling alone, and you are feeling desperate, and you are feeling frustrated and angry, and on the other hand, your husband is so filled with shame and guilt and feeling like he's not a man enough. So imagine these two people with high emotions having a conversation. It's not going to go well unless you feel your emotions. I want you to feel your feelings, but I want you to be mindful of your reactions. Look at what I'm saying. Feel your feelings. You feel hurt, lonely, disappointed, upset. You feel like there's no one else in this world who's going through what you're going through, because it seems like everyone is running away from their husbands, who's chasing them to have sex all the time. And so, if you are feeling hurt, if you are feeling concerned, if you are feeling confused, that the person who you most want to connect with, not only emotionally, but intimately, the person that you want to be physically intimate with somehow does not desire you, feel your feelings. You and I, we were created to be, we are relational beings. When our spouse is not pursuing and what it seems like wanting us, of course we're going to be upset. Of course we're going to get cranky. Right? I can tell you right now that if Renee is not getting sex often, he starts to get very cranky. He starts to act like River and Reed when they're throwing tantrums on Target because they're not getting what they want. That's exactly how Renee acts. And so why would you think a wife who has a high sexual desire, who is not getting sex as frequently as she would like, husbands, of course your wife is going to get cranky. Of course she's going to get a little upset, a little angry, and not understand conflict. If used correctly, they can produce greater intimacy in your marriage. Look what happened with Jacob when he wrestled with God, right? He came out of that situation converted. He came out of that situation a changed man, a transformed man. Their relationship would never be the same. Their relationship became better after he wrestled all night long. And so, husbands, wives, this conversation that you can have on sexual intimacy, it could be sort of a life changer in your relationship, but you need to go about it correctly. You need to go about it correctly. And listen, you also need to be mindful of yourself. You need to be realistic with yourself, and you might not be able to have this conversation just you and your husband, which is why you need to call a professional, which is why here in Abundant Marriage we have a course, and one of the pillars is compassion, and all things sex are discussed in this pillar of compassion, because we believe that when they want you to remember Psalms 139 verses 23 and 24, it says this: "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there is any wicked way in me, and lead me into the way everlasting." When you go to the desert, as did Moses, as did Elijah, and as did many others, when you go to that desert and have that desert experience with God, ask God to search your heart, to try you. It was the moon behind me, and there I was praying and pleading with God. I love walking with Renee. I love walking with River and Rita, and they love it too. We're actually training them so that we can start doing hikes with them. Renee this week said, "Oh man, we need to sleep in the tent with them outside there in the yard just so that they can start practicing." And so we love to walk together as a family, but I also need my own time with God. And there I open my heart, I open my vulnerabilities, I open my temptation, and I'm saying, "Lord, search me, know my heart, try me, know my thoughts, see if anything in me." When you go to the dead feelings, because you need to answer two questions. Number one, some wives may actually be a sex. It is oftentimes the case where professional help needs to come in. Professional help needs to come in, okay? And so some wives may be sex addicts. I've had several situations where that was the case. However, this is not always the case, right? We would be generalizing, we would be stereotyping that every single wife who has a higher sex desire is that she's somehow this crazy sex addict. That's not true. The other sort of side of the can could be simply that you have a particularly high sexual desire. And if that's the case, it's important that you own it, that you don't feel bad about it. There's nothing wrong with it, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. Assertive desire, which is where you are pursuing sex, you are oftentimes ready to go for sex, you are the microwave, right? You just click 90 seconds, boom, you are ready to go. And typically, those who are assertive in their sexual desires are those who have a higher level of testosterone. Now, the second type of this sort of desire is the receptive desire, and you would be the receptive desire. Now, in the 20%, the 1 out of 5 wives who have a higher sexual desire, wives, you would be the assertive, and your husband would be the receptive, which is, while they don't initiate sex, while they don't want it as frequently as you do, they're pretty okay in having it if you initiate, right? But the same way that oftentimes husbands would like wives to initiate sex, wives with high sex drive would also like for husbands. It's perfectly normal to be a couple where the wife is the assertive and the husband is the receptive, and vice versa. This is not abnormal. These are things, these are setups that are happening, and rarely, okay, rarely is it the case, maybe because God is funny, where you will have high sex desire husband, high sex desire wife, low sex desire husband, low sex desire. Rarely is that the case. Usually it's a mix match. Usually it's a mix match, which is why this husband, right, he calls me and says, "Amanda, hold up. There are wives out there who want to have sex more than..." He was just appalled, right? He was just appalled. But there is. And which comes to step number 3. Comparison is a thief of joy. Comparison is a thief of joy. Which is why, growing up, my mother always told me this. And she says, don't give while you can talk about sex. And we speak about sex very openly in my house to date. And in Renee's family, they didn't speak about sex as openly as we did in my family. My mom sort of made it a point because her mother was so sort of taboo, so, can't talk about sex, that she made it a point to be open about it with my brother and I. And so when Renee and I were dating, she would always put little videos for us to watch, like funny videos about sex and it was usually a pastor talking in like a couples conference. And I and I really appreciated that about her. And actually, it's what helped Renee and I feel very comfortable, even though we were very young when we got married, to talk about these things. And one of the things my mother said is, Amanda, never give details about your sex life. Never, and the word she used, never sell your husband, right? Never, oh, my husband is so good and blah, blah, blah. Don't cause father, which now, as a therapist, I think, that was really wise advice. And here's why. Because usually you'll have a bunch of guys sort of talking all of these things about their wives. Tons of men sometimes inappropriately sending pictures of their wives to their other friends. And vice versa. And it's absolutely inappropriate. Why? Because comparison is a thief of joy. Comparison is a thief of joy. You have a bunch of women, sort of selling their husbands, or he does this, or he does that. Behaving away men. While things may be true for certain women, sure, but it might not be true for all women. And so, number one, go to the desert alone. Number two, feel your feelings, but manage your emotions. Number three, comparison is a thief of joy. Don't waste time there. Don't waste time there. And especially if this is a sensitive spot, a sensitive area, don't go to your best friend or this, and oh my goodness, can you believe this is happening? And then you go to your girlfriend and you say, my husband doesn't want to have sex with me. What is she going to say? Oh, he's cheating on you. There's a mistress. That's what they're going to say, and it's only going to make you go in even more doubt. And this cycle of thinking that you're not enough, that you're getting cheated on it, then you're going to go out trying to be Sherlock Holmes, looking at his messages, looking at his emails, and then if you're wrong, you're going to cause damage in your marriage. And so, take it to a professional. Number four, don't assume. Wives, please. Satan is so good at putting doubts in our minds, and then we go and we start to assume all sorts of things. Listen, is it correlation is not causation? Correlation is not causation. And so I'm going to give you a few causes where it could be the reason for your husband. Now, listen, I don't know all the details of your sex life. You could tell me, right? We could work through this thing together, but I don't know. So I'm going to be throwing a lot out there. I don't have time in an hour to go through all the specifics of each one. Tonight, the only thing that I'm trying to show you is, listen, number one, if you are in the 20%, you are not alone. There are more than you think, and just number two, don't go asleep. It rarely is that even the case. Cause low sex drive in husbands. So one of it could be a hormonal imbalance. One could absolutely be hormone imbalance. And if that is the case, when you seek therapy, if you did the Abundant Marriage course, you will see specific steps. And one of those steps might be that you're going to have to go test your testosterone level. You're going to have to see a physician to see if everything is lining up. The second thing that could be, I'm not going to number it because there's a bunch of things. It could be some type of emotional or sexual trauma. Some type of emotional or sexual trauma. We are constantly speaking about this as it comes from the wife, but there are a lot of husbands who were abused, who were raped, who were violated, who were abused emotionally, sexually, mentally, spiritually. We're going to see spiritually in this case. I had a young couple before, when they got married, they had difficulty having sex, both husband and wife, because sex was made to be such a taboo. They felt dirty and disgusting. They felt the Sabbath, and they were like, oh, we can't have sex on the Sabbath. It's God's holy day, and He's not going to bless. I said, are you kidding me? When God made Adam and Eve, on the sixth day, what do you think they did on the seventh day, right? They celebrated. They had sex. Are you kidding me? And so listen, a lot of these are emotional or sexual trauma, this sort of belief also then that sex becomes something that it never was intended to be. And these are scars, these are wounds that need to be healed, that need to be taken care of. Another thing could be a season of high level of stress. High level of stress. Now everyone takes stress a little differently. You will know if Renee is upset. I can fake it a little bit. I can, be upset, and you can turn on a camera, and I can, with all the excitement in the world, Renee's seen it. Most time I'm like, oh, I'm so tired to do this live. And then as soon as the camera turns on, I am ready to go. Okay? For those who do the 5 a.m. prayer, they can tell you, Renee's alarm is linked to the lights in our room. when the lights come on, I'm like literally half asleep. As soon as the cameras turn on for the Zoom meeting, I am like 100 miles an hour. 100 miles an hour. However, during seasons of stressful thing, a husband who is under a lot of stress, he's not sleeping well, he's not eating well, he's not exercising, sex. How many husbands, when their wives said, man, I think he's cheating. Why? Because he's not trying to have sex with me. And then we would go and find out that it's because of a reason. It wasn't because he was cheating, it was because he was stressed. And the reality is that men experience times, moments in their lives where they lose interest for sex for a variety of reasons. So let's not go assuming, let's not go defaming someone's character when we have no idea what is really going on. And there's more. If this is happening where your husband, well, if the wife goes after the husband and she starts attacking him, what's wrong with you? You're not man enough. Push him away. You're going to push him away. We need to manage how we are going to go about expressing these feelings. And we need to make sure that we are not doing it in a way that we are attacking someone's character, making all sorts of crazy assumptions, that we're not attacking their character, and we're not using contempt. We're not using sarcasm. We're not undermining. We're not rolling our eyes. We're not demeaning someone. Because if you speak to your husband in this tone, in this way, with these facial expressions, he's going to do two things. He's either going to shut you down, right? He's going to stonewall you. He's going to ignore you. Or he's going to start, honestly, a medical issue. It could be a medical issue. It could be erectile dysfunction. Not only that, but also the wife can be experiencing that he is the reason why she is experiencing this pain. That honestly, having sex is a trigger for him and he doesn't want to. A husband who loves his wife, who cares for her, can you imagine every time you have sex with your wife, she experiences excruciating pain? It's going to be tough for him to enjoy himself. And so, for one of my clients, this was exactly the case. The wife would experience pain during intercourse, and the husband starts to shut down. He wasn't a bad guy. It's not that he wasn't desiring her. It's because he didn't want to cause her any pain. On and on and on. Also, be a reason behind your husband's lower sex drive. Fear of performing poorly. Oh, that's a good one. Am I going to amount? Am I going to perform? So many husbands have expressed this fear of, Amanda, am I going to perform? Number one. Am I going to be able to get my friend up, right? And number two, will I be able to please my wife? Will I be able to please my wife? And oftentimes it's the case in the beginning of marriage that husbands struggle with pleasing their wives. Where wives, there's almost sort of this learning curve. For one, for a wife to orgasm, and then two, for them to orgasm together. And so these are all things that need to be explored and need to be spoken about with curiosity, not with condemnation, not with judgment. No, because there's already so much fear, guilt, shame, frustration involved. God made sex to be a blessing and an awesome thing, something that brings us together. Which is why Satan will do everything in his power to make sure that we are not having sex with each other. But we need to go about it the right way. We need to go about it the right way. Another one is fear of rejection. Right? Two, well, how many times is one going to get shut down? So sometimes if sex is not happening, whether the husband is getting afraid that he's going to get shut down and so he no longer wants to have sex, or vice versa. Low testosterone, like we talked about, grief or depression, right? Sadness. There's many husbands with anxiety, with depression, who for whatever reason in that period in time, in that moment in time, there is a decrease in their desire. And it's not only a desire in sex, but it's a desire in their activities. It's a desire in hanging out with friends. It's a low desire in things that they once, sometimes growing up in the church, sex is not really spoken about. And so it's this like, no one can do it. No one can do it. Having sex on the... Who created the penis? Who created the vagina? And let me tell you something. Who created the clitoris? Listen, there is no other point, reason, function for your clitoris except to give you pleasure. So you're telling me that the God who created all of these things is now somehow against you enjoying sex on the Sabbath day? It does not fit with the character of God? Of course not. If you are having sex with your husband, you are having sex with your wife, the woman that you married, the woman that you vowed your life to, the one that you entered into covenant with, there is no problem with having sex on the Sabbath. In fact, the only problem I find is you not having sex on the Sabbath. Have it once, twice, whatever time of the day. Have sex. And the person who asked, I can give you even more biblical backup and points and verses to strengthen that argument. But absolutely not. God is the creator of pleasure. He is the creator of sex. And of course, He just wants you to have it in the right. The next point here is attraction. Now look, husbands have said, and they'll say, Amanda, please don't tell my wife I told you this. And of course I wouldn't, because then she'd murder him. Amanda, I'm not attracted to my wife because she gained weight. No creatures. And now wives also don't do this, because there's wives saying, oh, look at this, I gained all this weight, and look at my cellulite. Maybe your husband isn't even looking at that. But the more often you keep pointing it out, then he's going to notice, right? So stop pointing all of your bodily things that you don't like. Oh, I'm gaining so much weight. Oh, I'm so ugly. I'm so this. And comparing yourself to your friends. Don't do that. Don't do that. But yes, there's women go through sort of a period of low self-care, especially when they become mothers. Sort of moments where your husband maybe is not as attractive to you as he was before. But that's why we need to have conversations about it and talk about it, because obviously that's something that would be difficult to hear. That's something that's difficult to hear, which is why we need to maybe sometimes do it. I love this woman, but surely right now, she's wearing pajamas that have political faces on it, and underwears that are ripped, and you have like baby milk all over her shirt, and sometimes the kid sleeps in us. It's not the most attractive thing in the world, you know what I'm saying? I mean, so many cases of pornography, tons of men group of pornography, and it inhibits their ability to even have control over their penis at times. And so sometimes these men, because of all the, imagine, and with one click of a button, wash the dishes real quick so we can make it. There's so much fantasy, so much things that are unrealistic, that these men create these unrealistic expectations because of watching pornography, and then yes, they are unable to have sex with their wives. Oftentimes, the only way that they can pleasure themselves is those things. After I gave you, so after you did all those steps, bring it to because there's many more reasons. And finally, I think something that is so important to remember is that the same way, wives, that you're feeling sort of like this oddball, that you're feeling lonely because you feel like you're the only wife who is experiencing this, imagine what your husband is experiencing. So when he's difficult for him, who has not as attacking each other, I want to read this before we land this plane. I want to read this by Dr. Michael Sisma. I think I'm saying his name correctly. And he actually wrote 3 great articles specifically talking about this. Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. And I got tons of information from his article, especially the different causes for a low sex drive in men. And so Dr. Michael Sisma can be positive and can affirm the marriage, or they can be negative and destructive. So attributes for him, again, I'm using synonymous to assumptions. We assume all these different things. And he says some of them can be positive, but some of them can be negative. And the negative ones can oftentimes destroy your marriage. Look at what he says. My findings, he desired. Look at this. The pain was not found in who had the higher desire or who had the lower desire. So it didn't matter if you're part of the 80% or the 20%. The pain was not found in the percentage, is what he's saying. In essence, the high desire spouse, greatest desire. So you're thinking, wait, so where's the frustration coming from? Where's the conflict coming from? If it's not based on the high level of desire or the low, and I only want it once ever, he goes, the greatest predictor of distress was in the assumptions of the high desire spouse. And this is where we need to be careful, and this is where we're going to start tripping. If you make all of these assumptions that are not true, that are lies, that is attacking your spouse's character, this will destroy your marriage. And so don't do it. Don't let your mind get out of control. You need to take it to God. You need to go to the desert. You need to feel your feelings, but you need to manage your feelings. Reached out and said, Amanda, wives watching here thinking, what you know would be that you were just a few tweaks away from experiencing sex in your life. Good sex in your life. And again, it might look different from your neighbor. Maybe someone else is having a conversation that you and your husband need to discuss, that you and your wife need to discuss. Remember, comparison is a thief of joy. You two come together. And of course, we're going to have realistic expectations. If my husband wants to have sex every single day, and I'm on a low sex drive and say, every single day is kind of pushing it. I'm thinking more of like once a month, right? We're the same team. So no more assumptions. No more allowing your mind to think all of these crazy things. Figure out the reason why. Figure out the reason why. Do not defame the character of your spouse. Do not attack their character. Do not belittle them. Do not come with these, you're not a man. Stop the craziness. Stop the nonsense. Figure out the why first. Not in the way the rest of the world experiences in your marriage. I can tell you with all of the different couples who did the Abundant Marriage course, there's some who do it every other. There's some who do it once a week. There's some who do it once a month. It depends. And it's not to say that the person who's doing it every single day is somehow closer or has more of abundant marriage than the one doing it once a month. You don't know. Maybe it's an age thing. Maybe it's a medical thing. You don't know, and we cannot assume. Okay? I hope I answered that for you. If not, you can send it to me privately later, and we are going to continue this journey towards abundant marriages. Thank you so much for all of those who joined. I am going to leave up this video as we are now going to start doing. I'm going to leave it there on the IGTV. So if you missed the beginning, if you came in towards the end, you can there just rewind, watch it again, share with your friends, share with your family, leave comments, and let me know if it was helpful to you. Alrighty guys, I'll see you next Thursday at 8 p.m.